flag. That's a flag. Awesome drive, man. Awesome drive.
It's nice to close out a race like that. That was awesome.
This is the Team Blaney Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to 2023 season episode 39 of the Team Blaney Podcast. My name is Adam Rogers, and alongside me is co-host Steve Mez. As always, this podcast is brought to you by fans for fans. Steve and I have been following the drivers of the Blaney racing family for 2 decades, and Team Blaney itself launched on social media in 2014. Each weekly episode of the podcast offers an in-depth analysis of Ryan Blaney's latest NASCAR Cup Series race, plus news, notes, and a lineup of special guests all throughout the year. This week, we break down the number 12 team's run in the South Point 400 at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, the opening race in the round of 8 of the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. Steve, I'm not going to lie, out of all the episodes we've done this year, I thought that this is the one that was going to be the shortest, that I was going to have the least amount of fun doing. And I said to you, I just wanted to get in, get out, and get on with everything. But sometimes breaking news cycles will just come in and completely change everything. So there's just kind of so much to talk about, and everybody that's listening to this show definitely already knows kind of what we're talking about. So let's just dive right into that, and then we'll take care of business after that, and we'll move on. But man, when you pictured this weekend, did you think that this circus, this ridiculous set of circumstances, the drama would all happen, and it's not even the championship race?
What are you talking about? I didn't have my phone on all day. So what are you talking about?
Oh, Steve, if you only knew.
Oh man. We were ringing up the swear words around here when it all came down this afternoon.
So Ryan got DQ'd.
Yes,
he got DQ'd after the race at Las Vegas. On this,
yes, like 2 hours after the race, right?
Yeah,
roughly. And that was the first thing. So last night we're getting that message and going through Twitter and talking to each other, texting each other back and forth, and kind of like talking through it and trying to find a sense of humor about it, and realizing, there's still 2 more races, and you gotta be optimistic and gotta look ahead, and you gotta think, well, okay, we gotta win one of the next 2 races, and let's see what they can do, and a pretty good frame of mind about that. And you were even talking about, we need a pep talk today. We're going to need a nice, attaboy, and here we go. And the power of positivity that you like to say. And I was all ready for all that. I was getting myself prepped, and okay, we're going to think about that. We'll get that going. And then, this afternoon happened.
It's just crazy. So like I was saying, so Ryan goes through this race at Las Vegas, has a really solid day. We're going to recap that in a little bit later. Gets stage points, runs in the top 10 all day, finishes in the top 10. Still loses slightly to the cut line in points. Again, we'll talk about that part about it as well a little bit later. And we're like, okay, that's fine. So he didn't win, but he gets DQ'd, and from what we understand, it was an issue with the shock and the dampener and the length that it was. It was out of spec, so they disqualify them when they announced the post-race inspection. So I felt like that evening I went through like all the stages of grief, and gosh, cannot even imagine if this would have happened, after the win at Talladega, or if he had won this race at Las Vegas. I mean, it would have been even more of an emotional roller coaster. But I felt like from the time that it was finally announced all the way through the end, like you said, we kind of talked it over. We had a good game plan. We made some jokes. We put a poll out on Twitter or X that, saying, should we even bother doing our normal in-depth race recap? Because why go through all of that and then at the end just say, just kidding, none of this matters. So, but yeah. And then this morning I kind of woke up and actually was a little bit more depressed. And that's when I talked to you about, we're going to need this pep talk. So kind of be prepared for that. We'll do that instead of the race recap. And then just a couple hours before we logged on here to record the podcast, we get the news that it was a mistake. And honestly, I mean, I didn't even see that happening. I thought maybe there's a chance Penske would appeal. They would get their, go before the jury, state their case, maybe have a shot at this. But in reality, it was all an actual human error mistake on the inspector's part as they were going through post-race inspection.
Yeah, last night I'm looking for answers. Okay, asking questions online, on Twitter. Discord chat was really cool. Jake from State Farm on the Discord chat, was actually very informative. Somebody has some knowledge of these things. I was just looking for answers. Like, I wanted to know, okay, if it was short, how was it short? Was it something they did? Was it something that wasn't put in correctly? Was it an adjustment they made that they really shouldn't have made? So was it a human error, or was it a mechanical error? Did the part fail? Did something happen during the race from pre-inspection to post-inspection where the part failed? And then you find out today during the day that, that it's possible that it could have been a failure. It's possible this, that. But as we find out now that with the inspection process, that these things were the way they're supposed to be. And it wasn't even a problem with the part. It was a problem with the scanning of the area of the part. So it really is kind of a real relief to know that they weren't trying to work in a lot of gray areas to do something, and that it was within what it needed to be within. So the little bit of extra speed they had yesterday, and they did have some extra speed that, showed up at different parts of the races, was not something that they had to alter to get to. It was actually something they worked on with the car, the setup, and so forth. And it looks really promising for this week coming up even.
Yeah. So the news came out from NASCAR. I think it was between 6:30, 6:45 p.m. Eastern time on Monday. Here's their statement. After further review of the inspection process throughout this weekend's events at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, NASCAR has rescinded the number 12 disqualification penalty. Monday morning during its race weekend debrief, NASCAR discovered an issue with the damper template used for inspection. NASCAR then conducted a detailed investigation and has restored the number 12 stage and race finishing positions from Sunday. NASCAR has taken internal steps to remedy this issue. Brad Moran from NASCAR went on Sirius XM NASCAR radio, so basically kind of said the same thing. They realized Monday morning that a piece had shifted on the template by a very small amount. He said they took a look at the Penske shock, they took it apart, and it was good. Other teams' shocks that went through that were past the minimum, so they were also good. So I was talking to you a little bit about this, and like you said, we talked with Jake from the Discord chat, and some, I think, Brian Murphy, who I don't know if he works for SHR still or not, but he's been pretty vocal in talking about the next gen car and how the mechanics of it work and how it's put together. He mentioned that, things like this and with shocks and the way this works, that maybe there could have been a slight aerodynamic advantage because the way the shock is set up, it can affect the ride height. One thing from this weekend that was talked about all weekend long was air pressures. So they're running low, trying to run as low air pressures as possible on these tires to get the car lower to the ground for as long as possible. And plus it gets kind of maximum grip. So if they thought the 12 team was kind of meddling around with these parts to get the car a little bit lower, they could have understood that. But it turns out it was really just a template issue. One thing one of our followers mentioned, though, was like, well, now this shows that the 12 team went to the absolute max on this, or the absolute minimum, I guess, in this case, on this specific part of the shock. So does that reveal some setup things that they're doing? Will other teams take notice? I mean, this was a team that finished sixth, though. So they weren't the 20, they weren't the 5, they weren't up front leading laps all day. So maybe it doesn't. But man, it's been such a whirlwind. Like you said, I'm glad even when we thought he was still disqualified, we tried to find the bright side. We tried to find a little humor in it. I almost kind of relished in the fact that it was just going to be this, just win the next 2 races or win one of the next 2 races. That's all the focus is. Don't have to worry about stage points, none of that. I mentioned to you yesterday as I was going through those stages of grief or acceptance and all of that stuff that, well, I thought they were in a must-win situation anyway. But maybe they're not. And like I said, we'll talk about that. But so again, we put that poll up on Twitter when we asked whether we wanted to do this recap, and overwhelmingly, I think it almost nearly 200 votes. 69% of people said to burn the notebook, skip the recap, but we're gonna have to do that record scratch and go back in time here. You didn't burn the notebook. We can still do a recap, and I think there's still plenty worth talking about this race at Las Vegas, and then we'll talk points after.
Yeah, because I was going to say, right when you were talking about their speed and so forth, I beg to differ. At one point of the race, early in the third stage, before the caution happened, they were one of the top cars on the track speed-wise. And when they were running fourth, were within 2 seconds of the leader and gaining on everybody by 0.3. So, the last set of adjustments may not have worked out, or some teams did something a little better. But I think overall, they had speed to win the race, and that's a pretty big statement. Saturday they did our qualifying here, or practice and qualifying, and what was interesting about that was the whole thing with the right rear tire, because we saw three different incidents on track. The 9 car blows the tire, hits the wall. The 5 car comes in because he felt something wrong, and they found a hole in his tire. And later on, the 99 blows the tire. Ryan asks, because when he goes out on the track, Jonathan says to him, we want to run it out. Unless you feel something that we need to change, just run it all the way out. And Ryan, about 20 laps in, asks, well, how far can we go? And he asked that question based on the tire. They kind of know that this tire is going to have an issue, the right rear, because of the way the cars are set up. And Jonathan tells them 30 to 35 laps. So they had that situation figured out a little better than some of the other teams also. They weren't pushing it. Maybe they weren't pushing it enough, but truthfully, they had enough speed where they didn't have to, and they were worried about long run, and it helped. Ryan still brings it a little early. I think he brings it on after like 27 laps, and he was only the second car that ran more than 20 laps in the session, him and the 99.
So one of my classic pet peeves was especially when this happens to the 9 car, it's going to get pretty vocal on social media, and then the 99, and then almost to the 5. Immediately, fans blame Goodyear. Tires suck. These are terrible. We had Dave Nichols on earlier this year, who's a tire specialist for the 12 car. We actually talked about this and talked about their relationship with Goodyear, talked about the tire failures that happened early last season. And he, said in that interview specifically, they have a good relationship with Goodyear. It's not the tires, it's the teams. Somebody brought up in one of the chats I was having, or one of the posts, I think I commented on a post, tried to, I don't want to say correct people, but I was on a mission to civilize. And they said, but remember that Texas race last year where all the tires were blowing out? It was, that should never should have happened. It was a black eye for the sport, something like that. And I, pull up and I'm like, I know there are articles written about this, but immediately pull up an article from Motorsport, something like that, where basically from crew chief to team owners to drivers to Goodyear, every single one said, nah, it was the teams. So if anything, Goodyear has been criticized for the last couple of years is making tires that are indestructible and tires that won't wear, not tires that are exploding because they're not built properly. So that's just my quick rant on it's not Goodyear. Yes, has Goodyear made some blunders in the past when it comes to Indianapolis and some other places? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That was like a decade ago. Like this is a different company now. They're way more conservative before, but the teams are not conservative at all when it comes to this. And you like to say, sometimes you mess around and you find out. And that's what happened.
Qualifying, Ryan ends up in Group B, and Group A, the Fast 5 are the 5, the 8, the 23, the 19, the 45. So 3 of the playoff guys make the Fast 5 in that group. And in Group B, it ends up being the 20, the 24, the 17, the 1, and the 22. What's interesting about that, though, is Ryan's time would have put him in the top 5 of the other group. So they were really close. and he ends up 12th overall, and the 20 gets another pole. And I know he almost pulls this out, but the 20 car, he can't win a race from the pole. He ends up being the guy on pole, winning the pole, how many times in the last couple of weeks, and gets that number one pit position, everything else, and he can't put it together. So we get to race day. Stages are going to be 80, 165, and then 267. 9 sets of tires. The fuel run should be 62 to 66 laps. They get pit stall 25, which is the open behind him, and the 9 is in front of him. And this could be an issue as the day goes on, because the 9 he ends up losing a lap, but he ends up getting it back later on too. So, and he was running far enough back that Ryan was in his pit stall when the 9 come around once or twice. So there was a later pit stop that actually may have affected the part of the pit stop too, where he had to wait for the guy to get in there before he can go out. So once again, this whole thing with pit stops, you guys got to see the whole thing sometimes, the 9 into the rear for backups, 20 starting from the outside lane. Within a lap, Ryan's all the way up to 10th here, by lap 11 up to 9th, by lap 15 up to 8th, lap 22, he's up to 7th. It's talking about just tightening it up a little bit. He's actually building free, which is a little bit different, which is a pretty good thing to have, actually. At lap 28, he's up to 6th here. And the 20 and the 5 had kind of battled back and forth for the lead while this is going on. And then at lap 33, we get a green flag pit stop. So once that starts on the next lap, Ryan comes in, it's like a 9-4 pit stop. These stops were almost all sub 10 all day long. And the cycle, like 2-3 laps later, cycle continued here. And by the time it completes at lap 41, Ryan is P4. So he gained 2 positions in a green flag pit cycle. That's pretty impressive. About 9 seconds back of the leader, which is the 5 at this point. Things had kind of gapped out a little bit because he was about 3 seconds back of the 19 running in third. We finally get to a caution at laps 66 here. What is that? So so lap 66 we get a caution for the 43 with a flat right rear. And Ryan's talking about just needs a little more rear security. And this is a whole thing where it starts now with a couple of cars. Do they pit? Don't they pit? Or when they pit, what do? They take 2 tires. They take 4 tires. And this is one of those situations. So he goes in 4th, comes out 6th, but does a 9-7-7 stop. Well, 3 different cars, the 20, the 45, and the 6, all take 2 tires on this pit stop. So he actually, if you think about it, actually gained a position on somebody because 3 guys took 2 tires and only 2 beat him.
I said I didn't want to get into it, but it just bugs me still.
It's
again, we've been called apologists for the pit crew, but the only thing I will say is it wasn't a lot of people, but still a couple people chime in on social media during the race. Here we go again. The pit crew's terrible. Yeah. Every time he comes in, he loses spots on pit road, which we just saw the first pit sequence. That was incorrect. And then there's a few times during this race, and it might be in your notes too, where Ryan has preferred taking 4 tires during this race. He prefers it for the balance, prefers it for the long run speed, prefers it for the car. So they came in and they would take 4 tires on every stop. Several other teams on a different strategy will be taking 2. A 2 tires, and this is so stupid, sounds stupid and it's elementary. A 2 tire stop is going to be faster than 4. I don't know that they're not magicians. Yeah. But it was just every time, especially when it was under caution. Yeah. You're going to lose track position when you make this decision. So, but I would immediately see, they're so slow. It's like, no, they took 4. The strategy was different. I will respect that, that take. If you be angry at the right thing, go ahead and be upset with the call or question the strategy. Just be angry. I would just like to be angry at the right thing, and I'll respect it a little bit more. But you just can't. You can't change 4 tires faster than you can change 2. It's just not logistically possible.
We have people that listen to this every week, okay, and they download it, and that's great. Those are the people though that on that version of social media, they don't listen. They're not listening. They're not tuning in. They're not checking out this podcast. They're not getting that understanding. Like I literally pause the TV when they come off pit road. When the TV puts up the graphic on the left-hand side that shows 2-tire, 4-tire, 2-tire, 4-tire, who did what, so that I can keep track of it. So I just gave you the 3 cars that took 2 tires on that stuff. I gave you the numbers to 20, to 45, to 6. So understand, what happened. Well, I'm talking to the choir here. The people that are listening to this, they know this. They understand it. They're paying that attention to that. Those people on social media need to touch grass.
Yeah. And they don't need to listen. They don't need to listen to us. You just have to, if you just pay attention a little bit more closely, understand the nuances. I don't want to sound like we're talking down to people.
Not to anybody, no.
Anybody that's watching the race, thank you for watching. It's one of the best sports in the country. I'm glad you're a fan. I just would like some of the hot takes to be a little bit more educated, and we'd all your blood pressure would go down too. You wouldn't get so angry.
It's so angry.
There's one person that was just shouting. I guess they were typing in all caps basically all race long at me, but I just calm down a little bit. If you would just pay attention to the nuances, you wouldn't be so angry. But anyway, end of rant.
What's funny is Adam, and for those of you that know us a little bit better now, Adam runs these social media accounts under Team Blaney, right? And literally people are attacking him, just attacking him. And it's like attacking Team Blaney, and Adam's just like, trying to defend off these people. Cause it's like, I understand the passion of it, but also understand that there's a lot of factors, they restart lap 72 here. By lap 75, it sorts out to 5th. And the lap 79, the 19 passes. So he's back to 6th here. And the 5 wins stage 1. Ryan gets P6. Now, when we're going to talk about the points at the end of the day here, I want to point this out right now. Ryan runs a really good race all day long. He gets all his stage points he can get. There's only 8 guys left in the playoffs. And for the most part, 5 or 6 of the 8 guys finish with stage points. And at the end of the races, we see almost all 8 guys are within 11 positions of each other. So it's really hard to separate. Later on, like I said, we'll talk about points in that, but it's really hard to separate when everybody's performing so well. Last year at this time, the first race, like there was 2 cars that were out, the 20 car was out early in the race, so, attrition will happen once in a while. And, hopefully it's not Ryan related in the next 2 weeks, but just something to look out for when we're talking about all these points. Having a really good day, a great day almost, top 5 would have been super. But sometimes everybody else is doing a good job too. Now Jonathan's talking about who took 2 tires, some of them staying out, some of them pitting. And they leave the call up to Ryan here. They call Mustang and they leave it up to Ryan on whether to pit or not. Basically they're kind of counting cars, and this is where the 19 gets into trouble. So Ryan just goes ahead and he sees what he sees in front of him and he pits. The 19 stays out. The 19 is going to be on a different strategy here on out for a while, and it kind of costs him for a while, and then he gathers it up later on. This pit stop here, 5 cars took 2 tires. So, once again, we're counting cars coming off pit road. You're watching on TV, so all these cars in front of him that weren't there before, but you got to realize a bunch of them took 2 tires. They took this gamble to see if they can hold on to their track position. The leader who stayed out, this 19, he was on the bottom. Ryan started on the bottom here, about the 5th row back, restarted at lap 87. He gets up to 9th right off the bat, lap 90 up to 8th, lap 92 to 7th, lap 97. The 19 comes back to him.
I was going to say, I will say for like 2 laps, I was like, oh, this is a great call by the 19, because, this is probably what they thought. They'd get out in clean air, they'd lead the race, and they could maybe hold on to those positions, but that advantage disappeared so fast.
So quickly. Yeah. Lap 97, Ryan passes him. The 11's the leader at this point. Lap 108, we're up to 5th. Then we get a caution at lap 112 for the 42 spinning out. Ryan says they're like a little more rear security still. A little more front turn. The 9's back on the lead lap here. So this is going to, change the pit stop, because now the 9 is, coming to pit road, but he's coming to pit road behind Ryan, going to have to come around Ryan. Ryan's going to have to stop short of the sign. it does a 9-9 stop. Once again, sub 10. In fifth, out sixth. The leader's the sixth at this point, who was on a 2-tire strategy early on, and he held on to the position. And they restart lap 118, starts out to about seventh here. We got lap 140 up to sixth, lap 141. The 5 has an issue and tail slaps the wall and shows off how good he is at driving on dirt, basically. Then at 146, we had a caution for the 48. And they get to, talking about, Jonathan says most people are going to put on their scuffs here. So here's a thing where they wanted to make sure that everybody had 2 sets for that last stage. 1 set for the stage break and 1 during the last stage. So everybody put on their scuffs here. Once again, 5 cars take 2 tires on this pit stop. The 6, the 24, the 8, the 22, the 4. 6 is leading at this point because of this. Restarting, and he sorts out to about 12th here. While 153 is up to 11th, 156 up to 10th, 157 to 9th, 160 up to 8th. And the 5 is leading. The 5 wins stage 2, and Ryan's in 8th. Once again, some stage points. And says my balance was pretty decent. The 17 and the 19 get no stage points, at the end of the stage. So they go, for this stage break, in 8th, come out 9th. The 34 was like a 2-tire stop there. The leader's now the 20, and at the restart, the 8 and the 34 are all around him. They finally get around a couple of these guys. By lap 173 is 8th, 183 is up to 7th, 194 up to 6th. 197, he tells everybody they're building a little bit free here. And lap 205, he's up to 5th. At lap 206, he gets to 4th. And this is, like I said, this is at the point where he is only about 2.5 seconds back of the leader. He's 0.3 faster than the 3 cars in front of him. If this race goes green the rest of the way, and we'll never know, he would have been a green flag pit stop cycle, which we know earlier in the race, they gained 2 positions just on that alone. Even if they don't gain the positions within the cycle, green flag pit stop cycles, they don't make major adjustments with anything except maybe air pressure. So he was already 0.2 to 0.3 faster than everybody on a long run. They get a green flag stop in there and stay within 2 seconds of everybody. By the end of the race, he's there. He's probably passing people, probably leading the last couple laps and winning this thing. So the speed was there. All the criticism thing can go away, especially since now we've restored all the points. But the race itself, unfortunately, doesn't go this direction. With lap 210, we get a caution for the 14. And they come in and adjust. And these restarts, here's something that happens. It's said on the radio. You want to go to Stellanarius's feed on Twitter and read it. Go ahead and read it. I'm not going to go word for word here. But basically, and it was a bunch of different restarts. We saw this from the in-car camera. It took longer for some reason for his car to wind up and get going, like a lap and a half before it would finally jump and respond the way it needed to. And this is one of those instances. So he kind of got muddled in a little bit of it there. And they lose a position 2 on this restart here. And, sorting back to about 10th, we get a caution at lap 54. They stay out. At lap 222, the restart, they up to 10th, then lap 230, 9th, 234, 8th, 246, 7th, 262, 6th. So they got themselves to 6th, and they were chasing for the 5th position. They had, a couple more laps soon. They might have caught it. They were still faster than the guys in front of them.
That's exactly why we wanted the race to go green.
Yeah, exactly. Larson wins it. Ryan 6th. Ryan says, good job. We'll move on to the next one. And here's the thing, what we were talking about points. So the 5 finishes first, the 20 finishes second. Ryan is the next best playoff guy in 6th. Okay. The 24 finished 7th. The 45 finished 8th. The 19 finished 9th. The 11 finished 10th. And the 17 finished 11th. So point-wise, all the rest of those guys in the playoffs finished right next to each other, making it hard to gain on somebody. And like I said, most of them had stage points most of the day, except for those 2 we named at the end of stage 2. So yes, lose a couple points to the cut line, but the cut line is tightened up too, where the guys that are on the cut line and above it are all within 2-3 points of each other. So now it's a matter of, does anybody have a problem? Do you have a little bit better of a day to at least advance yourself up on some people? Does somebody from outside the playoffs win the next race? Somebody, outside the 8. And why not just win the next race and get it over with? But,
So let's talk about those point standings. Kyle Larson has locked himself in with that victory. He's advanced to the championship 4 at Phoenix, so he can kind of relax the next 2 weeks, or they can just chase wins too the next 2 weeks. And second, we have William Byron so this is, you're talking about it being tight. William Byron in second, just +9 to the cut. Truex is in third, just +2. Denny Hamlin fourth, also +2. Christopher Bell, who finished second in this race, in the 5th position under the cut line, -2. Reddick in 6th at -16. Ryan Blaney in 7th, just 1 more point back, -17. And Chris Buescher in 8th with that 11th place finish and no stage points, -23 to the cut line now. I have to say, and you've already talked about the kind of the positive side of it. There's still a chance, definitely a better chance than when they were disqualified, because when they were disqualified, he was at -56 to the cut line, absolute must-win situation. So now he's -17. This is a really frustrating part of the playoffs, but also an exciting part of the playoffs. This is why they do it. You have to remember, these are the 8 best teams, or at least, a couple really good teams have been eliminated already too, but for now, the 8 best teams in NASCAR competing for a spot in the championship. It is not easy. This is not going to be easy. The next 2 races will not be easy. This is just how it is. You just have to try to take some deep breaths, try to get your anxiety in check, because and I don't blame you. I'm going to be anxious for the next 2 weeks. If he doesn't win next week, I'm going to be really anxious sitting in the stands at Martinsville. If he advances to the championship 4, I don't even know if I can watch. We'll see. but we'll see. He's not in a must-win situation, but it's in my opinion close. But it's still possible. It's what the frustrating part I mentioned is that you can have a great day like he did, stage points, finish 6th, still lose points to the cut line, and you have to rely on these really elite race teams having trouble, and that doesn't always happen.
John at Belgium 64, one huge follower of ours, says, back to your regular playoff anxiety.
Exactly. That's pretty good.
That's perfect. So we're now we had that other anxiety, but now we're back to just our regular playoff anxiety. So, everybody hold on tight to get on the roller coaster, strap those belts in, and let's ride the ride this next weekend.
Honest opinion, did you, and again, this might have been part of our stages of grief after this disqualification initially yesterday, did you actually kind of like that they were just thrust into the must-win situation, that the only thing they had to focus on for the next 2 weeks were wins, and that was it? They didn't have to worry about points, worry about stage points, all of that stuff. Focus on the win. Did any part of you actually kind of like that versus what the situation they're in now, where they might be torn a little bit, versus, maybe we do need to really focus on stage points and not the win?
Here's the thing, that these races are run in such a manner that stage points come with it. In other words, I don't think they've come into this round at all looking at just pointing their way to anything. I think they came in this round looking to win one of the 3 races. I think if you don't do that, you shouldn't be here. And I guarantee you that every week, that's all they're really trying to do is win the race. And like I said, they had a strategy and they had a car that if they were given the proper run in the 3rd stage, they could have won the race. 6th is where they end up. But at one point, like I said, when they're running 4th, before that caution happens, if there's no caution, we may have seen something really, really cool. We may have seen one of those races where he ends up checking out later on because their adjustments were just right for long runs, and they needed that kind of long run. So
can you imagine if he won?
Yeah, and then had all this happening. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I would have died.
The NASCAR world would be crazy right now. I mean, it's already
even after
it is, but
even after Talladega, I celebrate when he crosses the finish line, and then I'm immediately a ball of anxiety because I'm like, I need to see Bob, I need to see Dustin Long, I need to see everybody there at the track, Jeff. Jordan,
Davey
I need
Siegel.
that tweet. Davey Siegel, I need that tweet. Inspection is clear. Which cars to R&D or no cars to R&D? And then unfortunately, with this past weekend, I get the text from you. I was kind of out and about watching most of the race on my phone, and I just get the text from you that said "Welp." And it's so funny that when you said that, I was like, okay, this is either a good thing in that, and I immediately went to somebody being disqualified in my brain. I was like, either Larson just got disqualified or we just got disqualified. And I open up, I just didn't even respond to you. I think I just immediately went to social media and then saw it was us. And then, so, but I don't know. A little tiny part of me thought this was a good thing to just, in my mind, just let's just focus on the win. And like you said, though, they're already kind of focusing on the win. There's some strategy to get stage points, but again, good point you brought up. If you're getting stage points, that means you're running up front already. So that was a really good point. It already comes with it. Going for the win already comes with the stage points.
This isn't like
unless it's a road course.
That's what I'm saying. This isn't like the Roval. That was the other example that would have changed that. But there is no Roval in this round, so there is no okay, we're going to stay out and stay out to the end of the stage and flip things. Now everybody's pretty much and the only thing that you saw 2 or 3 cars take a 2-tire stop, and really the 6 car was the only one. The 6 car took the 2-tire stop early on and then hung on to that position, and he did it 2 different times, but for the most part it didn't really help anybody. The 34 tried doing it and he ended up going backwards, but they were the 3rd best of the 8 cars, and that's pretty impressive. And you heard me go through this report. I did not detail who they passed or any of that. I just quickly went through it, and part of it was, pass this guy, pass this one, pass this one, pass with them. So they were moving forward most of the race. Even if they lost a couple spots here or there on a restart or something, and it was mainly on restarts or the 2-tire stops, they got them back, and they got them back within 5 to 10 laps, 15 laps. And the longer the run, they were in. So this week coming up, hopefully it's the same type of thing. Hopefully there's some nice long runs and they just grind it out and get those lap times over 20, 30 laps were pretty impressive.
So normally we would put a pause on talking about the race this weekend coming up and switch over to our Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League recap. But because of this breaking news situation and Ryan being reinstated and the points all switching around, the NASCAR Fantasy Live app and the website have not updated to reflect Ryan going back up into his 6th position. Currently, they're still showing him 36 with just 1 point earned on the day, because when he was disqualified, he lost his stage points, lost his finishing points, and they put you all the way to the last position in the standing. So we're going to use that as an excuse to skip this week, because honestly, I don't even know where I finished. I haven't checked yet. I don't think it was great. I know my wife, based on the finish, I think she started or finished in the top 5, top 10 again. So we'll have to wait till later in the week or maybe even next week to give everybody an update on that NASCAR Fantasy Live, because we don't want to put out a bunch of numbers there that might not be correct, because I do feel like there might be a lot of Blaney fans out there that were in our league that probably started him. I know I had him in my garage. I never brought him out from the garage, so I have no idea. But for now, we're going to table that discussion and switch on over to the aforementioned Homestead Miami Speedway, the 2nd race in the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs, round of 8 this weekend, kicking off with on-track activity on Saturday, October 21st. This is going to be an early one, and I'm already just talking to Tara about what our game plan is for Saturday, and I want to get to the track for practice and qualifying 9 a.m. Eastern time, practice and qualifying at Homestead. It's like a 5-hour drive for us. I don't think we're going to hit the road at like 3 o'clock in the morning. It's going to be a little crazy,
Yeah.
but we're going to power through.
Do it.
So,
do it.
but if you want to tune in, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, NASCAR Cup Series practice, and then qualifying at Homestead, Miami on NBC and the NBC Sports app. At noon Eastern Time, it's a doubleheader race day. NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series Baptist Health Cancer Care 250. That'll be on FS1. And then following that, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, the NASCAR Xfinity Series Contender Boats 300 at Homestead, Miami. That switches back over to the USA Network. So if you are a NASCAR fan on Saturday, you're going to be doing some channel surfing between NBC, FS1, USA. You can watch on the various apps, but it's going to be an action-packed day of on-track activity at Homestead Miami Speedway. And then the main race, Sunday, October 22nd, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. This is kind of different. The NASCAR Cup Series Forever 400, presented by Mobile One at Homestead Miami Speedway. Again, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time on NBC. It's the Forever 400 in celebration of Kevin Harvick. He won his championship, I think, in 2014 at Homestead. They announced today that Budweiser is bringing that exact paint scheme back with just a little bit of a tweak to move the number forward, just to celebrate Kevin Harvick. So he's gotten some really good send-offs this year. And let's see, maybe he can play spoiler and be one of those non-playoff guys that can come out and win. If not, hopefully they'll usually give everybody gets a chance to give him a round of applause during pace laps at some of these races. So kudos to them. But let's talk about Ryan Blaney, the 12 car, who has not been disqualified and who does have a chance to run for stage points, run for a win here this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway in this next race in this round of 8 in the playoffs. Homestead, though, and for a variety of reasons, and I've said this with a couple other tracks when it comes to his stats, they do not necessarily show how they ran throughout the race because he's had some issues. 8 starts at Homestead. Again, we only go there once a year. Average start around 10th. Average finish is 18.6. He's had some problems between some, run-ins with the wall, run-ins with other cars, and last year specifically, I would say a mental run-in. He had a mistake that he made from inside the car. So in those 8 starts, just one top 10 and one top 5, which is all in the same race. In 2020, he finished 3rd in the race there at Homestead. So not that great stats. He did, he led 70 laps there in 2020 in that race that, he finished in the top 5. So that was the old car though. So I don't know. Last year though, top 5 speed until the issue they had.
Yeah, that's what I say. He was in the top 5 when that happened. So, when we, like I said, we could have had at least a top 5 finish, and that would have been a big points difference going into Martinsville. But we've rehashed that last week, and here we are rehashing it this week. But literally, just see what qualifying brings. Like I said, last week's qualifying really wasn't that bad. It ends up being 12th, but the truth is if he was in the other group, he would have been in the top 5 and going for the pole. So, and the 22 car did pretty good with qualifying last week too. So obviously 22 is still giving him some good data to go off of. Joey, the initial start of the race, Joey was actually a little bit of a nice wingman to Ryan, 5-6 laps in there. And then later in the race, he also got out of Ryan's way. So, he did a good job, just to bring him up. So, they are getting help from the other teams, and, practice and qualifying is part of that. So I just will hopefully get a nice little top 10 starting position and get themselves up there near the front so they don't have to pass too many cars. And this whole thing this past weekend was they were building free, and that is actually to their advantage. It's a little bit easier to tighten the car up than it is to free the car up. So it was going really well. And I think that this is the same type of track, a little bit different, but I think this week it should be very interesting on Saturday.
So since he's only made 8 starts, I'll read off all the finishes. This is dating back to 2015 when he was with the Wood Brothers. 17th, 26th, 29th, 17th, 11th, 3rd, 29th, and then 17th last year after the issue he had exiting pit road when he messed up the shift there. So not necessarily trending in the right direction, but with this new car, every time they go back to a track, this is only the second time they've been at Homestead with the next gen car. They've always learned. The setups have evolved by so much. So I'd like to lean on the fact that they ran in the top 5, had that speed, but we just don't know what's going to happen until they unload at 9 a.m. on Saturday for that early morning practice at Homestead. What do you think of, so this is one of those tracks that only go there once a year, used to host the championship race, has some character, has a little bit of a gritty surface. It's weathered a little bit. The sun beats on it all summer long down here in South Florida. Where do you rank Homestead at when it comes to the intermediate tracks on the schedule? And do you ever miss it? Ever miss that old Ford Championship weekend and ending the season at Homestead as opposed to ending it out there in Phoenix?
I know you do.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you can make.
I was devastated when they moved it.
Yeah, you can be there for it. The last, they reconfigured it at one point, correct? They did some changes.
Actually, multiple times. So when they originally built the track, they built it as like a mini Indianapolis, and then they're like, "Okay, rectangle. We messed up," and then they added some banking to it, and they're like, we still messed up." So they tore it all up, and then they have the track that they have today, which I don't want to skew your opinion, but many people say is one of the best intermediate tracks as far as character. It doesn't have the dog leg in the front stretch. It's kind of a straight up oval, and has put on some really great racing with cars having to lean on the wall, and this next gen car can lean on a wall, and it creates some exciting action. Yeah,
that's the interesting part for the weekend is the guy who just won this past weekend is probably the favorite. And they some interesting statements in their post race was talking about that, how they're not going to just sit back for the next 2 weeks. They want to continue their momentum. They don't want to get rusty. They want to keep going. So it's very possible that he wins again this weekend with the way he runs the wall there. Also, the 45 car, extremely good at running the wall there, and obviously was doing it in the Xfinity car, and so it's one of those things where hopefully we can see what the 12 car can do up there on the wall too.
Well, Steve, this was a very interesting episode of the podcast. I wanted to throw one thing by you. One of our good buddies, Justin, threw out there and asked if we would be celebrating the end of this episode by heading out to our local Dairy Queen. And
I didn't quite get that. Didn't quite get that one.
It's the DQ, man. It's the DQ. Went right over your head.
Went right over my head.
Wow.
too much intensity about the whole thing. I totally lost that joke. Yes, I'm going to go get me a peanut butter parfait. Let's do it up.
That sounds good. I'll get myself a peanut butter cup blizzard to celebrate that DQ being rescinded from the 12 team. They're just 17 points from the cut line. Round of 8 NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. It's time to put up or shut up. They got 2 races here to go out there and win, go out there and dominate the points and get themselves to Phoenix, because I think we know what this 12 team is capable of if they could just get to Phoenix. But I want to thank you, everyone, once again for tuning into this episode of the Team Blaney podcast. If you'd like to learn more about myself or co-host Steve, just listen to our very first episode that explores our Blaney racing fandom. You can interact with us on Facebook and X at Team Blaney, and on Instagram and TikTok at team.blaney. And finally, we'd like to encourage you to support the Ryan Blaney Family Foundation. Established in 2018, this organization supports causes like the Alzheimer's Association and UPMC Sports Medicine through fundraisers, events, and membership in the Blaney Bunch fan club. To learn more, visit RyanBlaneyFamilyFoundation.org or follow them on Facebook, X, Instagram, all their active social media channels. And we want to wish them well this weekend, because they do have the Walk for Alzheimer's happening in Charlotte this weekend. So there's a Team Blaney walking team taking part in that. They're trying to raise some more money, some more funds for Alzheimer's research, and it's a big event for them every year. So kudos to them, and good luck to everybody that's going to be out there in Charlotte this weekend walking for Team Blaney. So for my co-host Steve Mez, I'm Adam Rogers. We'll catch you next time right here on the Team Blaney podcast.
Good night, Brussels. Check out the TikTok. Just win, baby.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.